So I wanted to talk about a few macro themes in AI and the way it's influencing humanity and publishing and creativity, but also some more microscopic parts of it, I suppose. So AI and our lives generally, and the sorts of things that I want to cover are the way we're reflecting upon the impact of AI and neuroscience, generally how it's affecting creativity and sort of works that we might expect in literature and publishing generally, the way that we think about our sense of value to the world, and whether that all comes from the work that we do or whether it comes from something else, and how AI affects that. We'll also cover the influence of AI on us culturally and how that will impact on our education process. And then, of course, finally, some things around citizenship. It's very applied use case for AI these days. So let's begin with the neuroscientific bit. I think it's quite interesting what's going on. In society and in evolution so far, the human brain and the human mind has generally two ways of thinking about things. You've probably all heard about Professor Daniel Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize for his thinking as a neuroscientist, about slow and fast thinking. That's commonly referred to as System 1 and System 2. And what we do is in System 1, we feel very quickly. So even listening to me talking now, some of you will decide this isn't for you. Some of you will think, actually, this feels like something you want to listen to. We make these judgments very quickly without feeling. System 1, and then System 2, we think much, much more slowly, and we tend to rationalize things and post-rationalize things. What we're seeing with AI, and it's the first time in evolutionary history, is that the human being is witnessing thinking being done really fast. So what we've all seen happening quite slowly is now happening quite quickly. That's why when you interact with an AI, you're often mesmerized by, my God, how does it think so quickly? How does it keep producing page after page of all this really well thought together pieces of reflection? And that is why we're so preoccupied with AI. We're witnessing a change in the way that we intersect with System 2, and the implications of that for us will include things like we will begin as human beings to be much more reliant upon our System 1. We will trust our feelings again more, and we leave System 2 issues to the computers, to the AI, because they'll do things like make sure that they land properly, that the sewage doesn't end up intersecting with water systems and so on. So where thinking is important, AI will increasingly take it over. And that's a big change for us societally from AI. With creativity, I think we've got a couple of things going on. There's human creativity and there's machine creativity. So with human creativity, people are talking a lot about, are we going to find ourselves in a deluge of AI-written books, and will there be just, AI is taking over all writing? And in part, yes, there will be. There's already an avalanche of AI-generated text, and there'll be more and more and more of it. But I think the way that you should think about artificial intelligence is really much more as an allied intelligence, a companion intelligence. It's a friend, not a foe, really. And the way that, for example, I used in writing my book, which was a creative output for me, was to reflect upon concepts that I could. Literature and the history of AI together. They were running very different courses, but you had neural networks in AI, and you had Sumerian clay tablets going on in publishing. And I didn't have a friend and neural networks, but I spoke to Claude, one of the AIs from Anthropic, and I said, what are the similarities, what are the consistencies here? And it gave me some interesting thoughts, which allowed me to be more creative in the work that I then articulated and narrated. So as a companion thinker, it really enhances our creativity. And I really encourage everyone to get engaged with AI, to think of it almost like, you know how to drive a car,
but the cars are changing a bit. So now they have airbags that deploy automatically, they have brakes which don't lock. You know, same as we've had in cars. In fact, AI is just another tool that will make sure that we're safer and more productive and perhaps more imaginative as well. On the other hand, there's machine creativity, and people have been debating, you know, a lot these days whether machines are truly being creative. I think what's interesting is that human beings tend to be happy only when they domesticate things fully. So when we find a system that's obedient to our wishes, we tend to be happier. And so I heard in my own company people saying, oh, Midjourney 6 is so much better than Midjourney 5. And when I asked why is that the case, they said because it does what we tell it better. And I thought, well, there's domestication. But actually, what people are referring to a bit dismissively as hallucination is sometimes creativity coming from machines. So sure, if it gives you 6 fingers where there should be 5, that's not great. That is just a hallucination. But where it comes up with a different visualization or a different conceptualization of something you thought about previously, I think we shouldn't dismiss that AI is actually showing us machine creativity from time to time as well. So I would remain tolerant and open-minded of what we see coming out of AI. When we think about work and worth, historically, it's a rather depressing picture, really. We're educated for a brief period, then we work for a while, and then we slowly die. It's kind of education, career, and retirement. And I think what we have is the opportunity nowadays to redefine our working lives so that we work less, do more things, and define ourselves, not just by our careers, but what we do during our productive adult life. I don't know, you know, what uptake there will be of this because it's economically disruptive and it's certainly new. But if, as people say, that, you know, we could do our work in half the time because the AI is helping us, it may be the case that we should find something else to do with half of our working lives and define our worth to society in a slightly different way now. I know it's a provocative thought, it's a philosophically, economically, and even politically charged thought, but I think it's one that should be lingered on and debated a little bit. How do we spend our time in the AI period of our lives? Education, I think, is an interesting one. If you look back through history, the wise person was the person who retained a huge amount of information. So if you think about the clever people you come across in your life, they tend to have big brains, full of information about many, many different subjects. Almost think of it as a hard disk with great random access memory. So you ask them about medicine, they can talk to you, paintings, they can talk to you, water skiing, they can tell you how to do it. Everything they seem to have this encyclopedic knowledge of things. But actually, that was to do with being a repository, a retainer of information that you could then serve as people needed it. I think what's changing now, particularly with Gen Z and certainly with Gen Alpha, is that we are seeing a time where streaming is much more important. I can access all the information I need to make the decisions I want to make at this point in time. And so what we're going to see is the emphasis changing from retention and learning to critical thinking and decision making. It's a huge change. And, you know, Gen Z is often ridiculed for being ADHD and not being able to, you know, commit to careers and changing their minds all the time. Actually, I think they're perfectly set up to be super users of AI because they're not obliged to read, to learn, to retain. They're just really good at filtering. There's a thing in data science called sensor fusion, where you attribute particular weights to the source of information you get. They're good at that too. When I read it on this newspaper, I give it less importance than when I read it on that news channel, and so on. They're incredibly powerful users of AI, and I expect to see, because of that, quite a lot of interesting new literature coming from the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha generations. Citizenship is something that's quite interesting. With the proliferation of AI translation, for example, we're going to be able to habituate ourselves to literature and to thinking from many more cultures at the press of a button. So right now, you can go into an AI, say, can I see some thrillers written by a Mongolian novelist? Now, 10 years ago, you'd only find it written in Mongolian and you couldn't understand it. But today, you can get a reasonable translation immediately of a Mongolian thriller. And that might habituate you to understanding the Mongolian culture. And so I think there's a chance that we're going to become more acquainted with many more cultures much more easily, and that we'll be less defined by national boundaries. I think another contributor to that is that this technology is coming to us from private corporations more than it is from governments. So, you know, do you connect yourself with Google or with Meta? Do you think that you're more of an Amazon person or an Anthropic person? You know, these sorts of decisions are going to be new decisions we make in the loyalties of our lives. And then finally, around publishing, just before I end with Shimmer. In publishing, I think there's some good things happening. I think there's going to be truly much more interactive writing, where you can choose the sorts of endings that your narratives have. There'll be much more finessed and nuanced marketing. There'll be much more creativity born of companion AIs I talked about earlier on. More negatively, I think there'll be some hyper-personalization. So if we talked about echo chambers before, there's going to be some really tight echo chambers coming our ways. I think there'll be too much mimicking of authorial styles. It'll be very hard to tell a deep fake from a real. That's already happening on it. On TikTok, I saw George Clooney making the speech the other day. I didn't understand. And of course, it wasn't him. It was just a fake of him. So we're going to be running pretty hard to know what's authentic and what isn't authentic. But I think the exciting thing for me is that we'll have an enabled new generation that employs their powers of critical thinking with a huge amount of interesting information that's instantly accessible. And I think that'll produce much more challenging ideas around philosophy and politics and economics than we've had for a really long time. I think the other thing that it can do is to help publishers, authors to have a slightly different value equation emerging. Historically, publishers really, if you think about it, gave authors a great deal of technology. They typed their manuscripts, they printed them, bound them, distributed them to retail. I think now AI, properly qualified by publishers, will be made available to their authors and will help them to be productive, efficient, creative, and imaginative as well. So at the moment, at this point in time, sort of early 2024, there is still a preoccupation correctly with what the copyright issues are, how compensation will work, what the revenue models, the revenue shares will be between content creators, publishers, and language model users, developers. But I think once that all settles down, it'll be a time when everybody has their personally tuned AI. And with publishers, they will be giving authors particularly tuned AI models. And finally, just a word about Shimmer, the company that I run. Essentially, we're just a use case of applied AI, where essentially what we do is we create advertising that sells books. And the way that we do that is we take from a publisher or an author who gives us their work to use the EPUB of that work. We have 3 machines. The first one we call an analyzer. That analyzer reads the book and understands it structurally in terms of its narrative. So it might be about mackerel fishing in Sweden, but it also understands it psychologically. So it understands it slightly strangely. This book is about melancholy and depression and cruelty, so it's a weird book. But that produces a unique fingerprint. So every piece of work, the whole book is read, all the pages are understood. None of that goes into the training set of the LLMs, by the way. It's hermetically concealed and just used for that purpose and then returned out of it. And with that unique fingerprint, that book DNA, as we call it, we then use our second machine, which is the advertisement generator, and that manifests exactly what the book DNA is and brings it to life. So the words that are hidden on the pages come to life through another form of expression, which is visual very often, it's advertising in any case. And then that is given to the third machine, the media deployer, which says, I know where there are people in the world who are interested in mackerel fishing in Sweden, who might have a touch of melancholy or depression or interested in cruelty, and it serves those advertising executions to those people. So it's matching the book to the reader. It's what Porter Anderson from publishing perspectives termed reverse discoverability. So instead of always targeting the reader and saying what sort of books would they like and trying to get them to come and find new products, this way the book is finding its readers. It says, this is my DNA, I'm expressing it through my advertising, and I'm finding you in the wild
through various social media channels, whether it's Meta or Google, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Reddit, and so on. So it's just a very practical application of AI, which has got benefits. The benefits for publishers are that their backlists see much more of the light of day. That's why we put shimmer readings into the light. The authors get much more recognition and reach and discoverability, and the readers are matched with books which are psychologically much more suitable for them, and therefore more likely to be fulfilling and to cause a positive experience for reading. So I hope that was interesting for you. Thank you very much for inviting me to this talk, and have a good day.
Thank you, Nadim. This was really insightful and food for thought. We really live in fascinating times, and as much as I can say that I am cautiously excited about the future of AI in creative writing. So back to your book, Shimmer Don't Shake: How Publishing Can Embrace AI. Have you used any AI in its production or in its writing, development, or maybe the cover? Have you used any?
Actually, I mean, one of the things that we can do in Shimmer is produce book covers, but we don't. You know, we're being very careful to respect the trades and the crafts that exist within the publishing industry. And there's a whole career and a whole industry of people who do things like book covers. So no, that's completely done by a human being. That was my choice. And the writing has been completely done by me. But what I did use AI for was to make me think about things. Because I was thinking about two areas which I know quite a lot about, but I'm not an expert in either of them. And that's AI and literature. And I was trying to see what the intersection between publishing and large language models and diffusion models were. And I could do quite a lot of that thinking and research myself, but the AI absolutely helped me to do this.
And also, while trying to see this and study this nexus and this intersection between both, so like you are the human version, and you need also the tech or AI point of view. So I think it's fair enough. It's a fair play. We've got plenty of questions for you, but I'll limit it to 4 questions. So the first one is about the audience. So in today's digital landscape, understanding and fostering meaningful connections with the audience is paramount. How do you think it can help creators better understand and also connect with their audience?
Well, I mean, it's a bit like just human relationships. You know, the better you know something, the more nuanced your recommendation of something is. So if they don't like pasta, after a while you don't recommend a pasta dish to them. You know, and the more the AI has a nuanced and finessed understanding of you, the more likely it is that you can match them with published literature that is interesting and suitable. The only thing to be cautious about there is that it's kind of inexhaustible, it's relentless. So you have to at some point say, that's enough, you know them well enough. You don't need to know what they did with essay at 7:37 in the morning. So I think it's just limiting the intimacy of the information.
Okay. Now, while some may fear that AI could replace human creativity, others see it as a valuable tool that can enhance the creativity process. How can creators leverage AI to enhance their creativity rather than replace it? Like, how can we do the balance here?
I think it's quite easy to tell human creativity from machine creativity in literature.
Yes.
Just because the large language models are tuned to be quite neutral sounding. And one of the ways that you remember books that people's writings is the tone of voice, how provocative it is, the turn of phrase. But they're much more kind of centered than we are on the edges when we're trying to get people to hear things properly. That will change over time. It will become better at articulating a more human, spirited way, a provocative way. But for the moment, the way I think authors and producers of content can employ AI is principally as a great researcher and as a sort of companion in thinking. You know, you iterate thoughts like, I was thinking, is AI like an airplane? No, is ice cream like an airplane? I don't know who to answer that. But if you start with an AI, it will give you an answer that will be stimulating in some way. You might dismiss it, but I think there's somebody to talk to about anything now. And I think that's, by the way, why there's so much online therapy. And there's a Russian application of an LLM called Replika,
which was created beautifully by a woman whose husband died too young.
Okay.
And she put all of his speeches and talking and writing into a large language model, and she could then talk to him all the time. That became a very intimate piece of software people were using to replace real relationships and just to have online relationships completely. But that's because we're beginning to use it as a constant companion.
But don't you think we are crossing some red lines, like especially in this example?
And should stop.
Okay. There are many conceptions about AI and also specifically about this intersection between AI and creative writing. What are some of the misconceptions that that you have like that you have witnessed, that you have heard of, and like about the AI's role in creative writing, in the creative content creation, and how do you think we can address them?
I'm not sure I understand the start of the question.
Okay, so what are some conceptions people have about AI's role in creative content writing?
I think people are really good. You can just go to the AI and write me a fantastic book in the style of Patricia Cornwell, you know, about some sort of spy story set in Virginia that goes to Bolivia. And you know, it'll write you something.
Yes.
It won't write you a great novel, it won't write you a great book. It won't do it yet. It'll get better and better as time goes on. So I think there's a fear that you can just go and press a button and get something. That's just not true. But what you can largely do is say, I'm not sure how to fix the vacuum bag on my Electrolux. And instead of going to YouTube, somebody in the world somewhere will have narrated how you can get that content. And that very mundane, everyday living content, why wouldn't we let AI do that for us? So I think the fear is it's a way that creativity is going to knock all of us out of origination jobs. I don't think that's going to happen. I do think it's going to replace very mundane content generation.
Yes, and I personally think that for generative AI, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's this like misunderstanding of the conception, or yes, like the people do not really grasp the conception of generative AI, that it is like a conversation and there's machine learning that is involved, and then it gets better with the prompts, right? So it's not just like we put a prompt and then we get an answer and that's it, but we need to
I think it is, you're exactly right. I think it's iterative. And the more that you give it, the more that you get back. There are limits to that. Sometimes it just runs out of stuff that it can really do properly. But that almost daily is reducing them. And there's an almost infinite amount of conversation that you can have already. So I think the more that you give, the more that you get. Just one caution that I think is worth sounding. If you upload things like PDFs to the free versions of a lot of the AIs, like to ChatGPT,
yes,
what you upload does go into the training set. If you take a professional where you subscribe, you can limit that doesn't go into the training set. So if you've got sets of things of your own that you don't want to be a part of public knowledge, buy a subscription. I'm not trying to sell subscriptions to AI, I'm just saying that's a way to keep your things to yourself.
fair enough. Now, one last question to wrap up. Looking ahead, what do you see as the most exciting possibilities of AI and creative content in the next decade?
Gosh, I think we're just going to see all sorts of. It's a bit like years ago, we'll be all driving, flying with cars. Now they're not so far away now; they've taken longer. And I think we've always thought similarly in publishing about we'll have interactive fiction. So I think things like multimedia interactive fiction will become true. You're reading a book and you say, I want to go down the happy ending, not the sad ending. I want to go down the happy ending that stays at home and doesn't go out to work. And you keep forking in the road. And then you meet communities that have done the same, and you talk to them about why they did that. Then you create new stories. And it's going to be much, much more interaction.
I'm excited about that future. Thank you so much, Nadim. Thank you for the audience, and thank you to colleagues and the technical team in the back end. And I hope that this talk will inspire the audience to learn more about AI and this nexus and intersection with creative writing. And don't forget, like, if you want to know more about how publishing can embrace AI, so this is a great resource for you. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.